We are now going to reconvene for a practitioner panel discussion, and this is where we actively would like questions from anyone, whether you're virtual or in the room. I will be fed questions, so when you see me looking at my device, I am not texting. I am really going to be looking to verify that there's no questions from the virtual attendees. So if you have any questions at all, this is the time to ask them. For those of you here, the panelists will all be here through lunch. The whole purpose of this lunch is truly networking, to find somebody that offsets your expertise or your competency. So I'm going to, at this point, not introduce everyone individually, but starting with Amisha, each of the panelists, and we're missing Courtney today. I wish Courtney could be here. So it was very interesting. Body language speaks a lot, and they all scrunched together. You know, before, if you notice, the chairs are really spread apart, and now they're together and they're talking, and that's really a good sign for the panel presentation, which starts our collaboration conversation. So, Amisha, let's hear a little bit about you, your firm's journey to EB audits. We all do EB in a different way. We all came into this in a different way. So if you can give us your journey, and then Jennifer, you can follow with Angela soon after. So give a little bit about your background.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amisha Patel. I work at Johnson Lambert, and our firm specializes in 3 niches, and one of those niches is benefit plan engagements. And so I've been with Johnson Lambert for about 7 years now, focusing specifically on benefit plan engagements on the attest side and auditing them. We have about 85 benefit plans, including 11K filers, and there's definitely challenges with benefit plans, and we have, some of those challenges that we see are really the complexity and diversity of those benefit plans, having defined contribution plans, defined benefit plans, 403B plans, as well as health and welfare plans. Courtney?
Okay, I'm Jennifer Lehman. I'm from Hanseman Weeble in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I've been with the firm for 18 years, and I started on the first employee benefit plan engagement right after busy season, and I guess they say the rest is history, and have been really engaged in the employee benefit plan audit practice ever since. When I started doing the engagements, we had the engagements they were kind of paralleled with whichever partner was in charge of the financial statement audit, and so they were not really considered a specialty area. And the more I did, the more that caused me concern, so I approached the partner group and pitched the idea of really bringing those under the umbrella of 2 different partners, and at the time it was what is now our retired managing partner, and then who is now my cohort or my co-partner in the employee benefit plan area. And so we funneled all of our plans into a specialty group with 2 partners. There are 9 of us that work in the engagements together. Some of us are tax and some of us are audit. And we found that really gives us the ability to meet together, to pool resources internally, to provide better resources externally. So that's kind of the history of how I got to where I am.
Hi, I'm Angela Kearns. I'm a shareholder on the audit side for Wallline Horn Insurancer in Norfolk, Virginia. We have a single office in Norfolk, approximately 80 people. We audit about 26 plans. We don't do any public companies. We focus in defined contribution, defined benefit plans. And I think my journey, what I've learned over the years is you don't have to be an expert in everything. You've got to know when you're outside of your wheelhouse and be willing to reach out to other firms or other subject matter experts and just get another set of eyes on some issues. We can all read the guide, we can all read the research, but sometimes it really takes reaching out to another professional and just having the conversation about some complex areas. We recently ended up auditing an ESOP that was terminating and just was outside of our comfort zone, and we've reached out to one of the partners in our alliance just to have them do the QC audit and give us some guidance on through the planning and through they're actually going to issue the audit opinion. So that's been a really good resource for us.
So you all kind of fell into this. Jennifer, it's funny that you said after busy season. Which busy season? You're presuming we think that's tax busy season.
That's true.
So
It was right after April. I started at the firm in January and hit right after April 15th. That was my busy season.
And that's how oftentimes when I work with auditors, they might do multiple things, but for my firm, when we are asked to give things to auditors, we love when it's scheduled in advance. So right now it's funny that Ian Dingwall said, well, you all should be doing your Form 5500s. Well, we knew 2 weeks ago, at least, which Form 5500s we were going to need to extend. So we're now working on those extensions, and so we know exactly what our focus is because we're scheduled. And the one thing that I must say that is hard to do as an EB auditor, and therefore it overlays to the compliance firms or the record-keeping firms, is that things come out late. Oftentimes it's after April 15th when you attend the conference in May. And so I'm presuming that you start your scheduling for your audits now. So if there's anybody in our audience today or who happens to see your name as one of the firms or individuals who is an expert, are you like really totally scheduled out right now? I mean, how do you fit in if a new client came to you right now? What do you say? Are you scheduled from now until October 15th with audit work? What do you do? What does your calendar typically look like?
We are fully scheduled. Our typical benefit plans in terms of planning and review phases typically begins right around after March 31st, I would say. We've come to experience with a lot of our benefit plan engagements, service providers start rolling out their benefit plan packages starting around April 1st, once quarter one ends. And so typically the planning and review phase begins right around then, just being able to take a look at some of the plan financials, being able to have our associates and staff start making sample selections for a lot of the fieldwork procedures that are needed. For a lot of these service providers, it does take them 10 business days or greater to turn around information. And so knowing that, to be able to plan, especially starting early in April and May, and so when these benefit plans, the actual fieldwork does commence probably around mid-May, it's much easier to be able to have that planning and review phase done before we start the fieldwork.
Anything to add, Angela, Jennifer, to that?
We are scheduled out as well. What we try to do is get everything started after the AICPA conference in May, just in case there's something that comes out that we don't feel like we fully addressed already in our audit plans. We also like to use interns to do some of our work that is a little more tedious, like equity footings, or just getting all the documents that have been piecemealed to us during busy season into our files, and it allows us to get them a little bit of training. So we like to not start any of the benefit plans until June. And if a new client comes on, we typically do a lot of the work in-house with only a couple days in the field, so it's easy to add to that.
Okay, I have a question from a virtual person. Due to the limited time a peer reviewer has to perform a firm's peer review, do any of you foresee a peer review focusing on just EBP and government audits only as a separate engagement?
So for our peer reviews, our peer review firm has a heavy expertise in both government and employee benefit plan audits, and I, of course, always think that they're being unfair in all the numbers that they're pulling relative to the rest of the engagements. However, I don't see that the timing is an issue. That doesn't really affect our firm. I don't know.
I'd be in favor of that. I like that because I think a lot of the peer review, what's beneficial about that is the feedback they give you about your files. I mean, even if they don't see a deficiency, they might say, hey, we do this based on this audit risk, and sometimes you learn things, and I agree, you're a little bit, somebody said it earlier, that you might have an expert doing your peer review who's an expert in benefit plans, and you might not. So it would be good to have a focused approach, I think.
So I have two questions for you, Mr. Dingwall, that came in from virtual attendees. So I'm going to allot 5 minutes at the end, if you would be so kind to come up at the end before we break for lunch. Is that okay? I appreciate that, because they're really dedicated to you and not necessarily the panel. So one of the things that we talked about when we were putting this panel together is, what would you want to say to a firm that quite obviously, from the work you've seen, when you take over an audit that you see has not been quite as compliant as your firm might perform, what would you want to say to that CPA firm about how to do this different? How can we explain what is different and perhaps what is better? You were, at one point, each of your firms, did not really choose to focus on EB audits as a firm practice. So what advice do you have? Is it specialize or collaborate? What advice would you have? And I guess we'll start with you, Angela, since I always seem to start with Amisha on this end. So we'll start with you. What do you want to say to those firms? I know that I see clients when we help our plan administrators, our clients, do an RFP for their audit work for their plan. And that's the way we typically get involved. We either send data to the auditor or we help our clients try and figure out the best auditor for their work. So in that environment, there's only so far we can go, because it's really how many plans you do, your approach. But oftentimes there's such disparity in the fees that are charged. I mean, I've seen fees as low as $2,500 to do an EB audit, and I'm just shocked. I don't know if you could do quality work. So I'll start with you, Angela.
I would just say to that, I don't think it's worth it to do 1 or 2 or even 3 or 4 of these types of audits. They're just too specialized. There's too much to learn. I would never want to put my license on the line. There's a lot of training that we put our people through, even just to do our 26 plans, because it's important. There are a lot of eyes. You've heard from so many agencies here today that are looking at our work. I want to be able to sleep well at night and know that our work is quality work and that it would be supported under audit. It's, of all the things you can do as a practitioner, that would not be something I would choose to do.
Any other comments, Amisha, Jennifer?
I just say that there are resources available, and that kind of what we're trying to accomplish here is that, and she said it earlier, we reach out to each other and we help each other gain proficiencies and gain knowledge, and in some cases we refer engagements that we should not be performing. And to just I guess re-emphasize is that it's not just our license or our firm practice, it's the participants that we're really representing that we really need to be looking out for as well. So when we're representing that we're performing a quality audit, we really need to be doing it.
So you're the resources that all 4 of you, Courtney's not here, of course, have agreed to be resources to firms that may today only do 1 or 2, or who may really not have an expertise in an audit that they are charged to do. They've probably quoted their fee at this time of year. They've probably quoted their fee. They probably are staring at the schedule. So what's your advice? What do you say when somebody calls you? I'm going to start with you this time, Amisha. What do you say if somebody's calling you now? You just said you're already scheduled. Okay, so what kind of resources can you offer? I hear about this pre-issuance concurrence, or this pre-issuance inspection, or Ian Dingwall at one point, and we're talking about this, and can there be a concurring inspection? Can there be some way that you don't necessarily need to do all the work, but you can still collaborate with those who, after hearing today, know that they really don't have the expertise? It's, I think, daunting to kind of face up to the fact that you thought you knew what you were doing, and now you hear EB, and the work that's required to do these audits proficiently, it's a bit daunting. And I don't know that me, and I guess I'm average. I don't think I'm a super smart person, but I think I'm an average learner. The AICPA is great resources, but where do you start? There's so much resources. So, Amisha, what are your thoughts? What would you tell somebody if they called you and said, I have this work, how can you help me?
Sure. So I think, we would be happy to, a huge part of today's conversation was collaboration and efforts, and we would be happy to talk with firms or individuals who came to us asking us for advice. We have these benefit plans, we're not really sure what to do, and while there's resources available, we don't have that certain expertise. And so we would be happy to entertain the idea, whether it was pre-inspection or post-inspection, as to providing our thoughts and resources in terms of how to specifically handle the unique challenges of auditing benefit plans, even tackling on technical topics. One of the things that we've always done in terms of any complex or unusual transactions is we haven't been hesitant to reach out to the OCA's offices in getting their thoughts and advice, but also really working with not only other firms, but the other parties involved with the plan. So whether it's the OCA's offices or whether, it's the legal counsel, the plan sponsors, all those parties are truly key and relevant to being able to audit and performing a quality benefit plan.
Jennifer?
I concur with everything that Amisha has said. I think that depending on the timing of the year, being able to help guide another practitioner to resources or to help come alongside them, I would encourage that if there are other practitioners that do need some guidance or some help with resources, that they speak sooner rather than later, if we're talking about calendar year plans.
And I would just add, I think practitioners need to decide whether it's something that they want to do on an ongoing basis or if they just need help with a couple of issues to get, one plan done. If you're only going to do a few, it's probably best to just let another firm handle the whole engagement. I think from a client-facing perspective, your client should be able to respect the fact that you want to have a quality product on their behalf instead of trying to do something that you probably shouldn't be doing.
I know I'm a little passionate in the financial literacy arena, as most people who know me know. And in my view, there's in Richmond, in Virginia, there is a media person who is fairly outspoken about her journey from being totally debt-ridden and insolvent to really being able to balance a checkbook and understand what she needs to do in order to keep her debt in check. So, that's like a superhero. Do you know what I'm saying? Because so many people can talk about financial literacy, but if you've been there and you've been down there, other people can really relate to you, right? So in our journey here, what we're doing is we're asking those firms and those CPAs who are really questioning, should they be doing this, really questioning how to step out and how to approach you. And we want them all to end up being superheroes. They were there, we're trying to move their needle to be somewhere else. So what about competition? So you help them with an engagement. And Angela, let's just say that they do take over the EB audit. So how do you handle the business part of this profession? And there is a business element to this profession. And that's how we survive, by what we do. So how do you bridge that in your conversations with a firm where all you're going to do is the EB audit and that's really all you are going to be focused on? How do you communicate that? How do you walk the talk?
That's a good question. I think back to when I first got involved in employee benefit plans, we were part of the McGladrey Alliance, and it was when the legislation came out about you can't be the TPA and the auditor, and they were looking for a firm to partner with that could do, issue the opinion on those audits. And we had some very good discussions about this is going to be your role. is that okay with you? We do not want you to talk to the plan sponsor about doing the rest of their work. We need you to just do this piece. I think it just has to be an upfront conversation. And I think when you're reaching out to another audit firm and you want them to issue the opinion, you've got to understand you've got to compensate that firm for that risk transfer. So it's not just, I'm going to review your work papers for $500 and give you my audit opinion. So I think that's another thing to discuss early on, to say, we're going to take this piece on for this amount of compensation.
But you still consider it a collaboration, right? Because you are collaborating with them, right?
Absolutely.
So do you have any agreements that you've done with firms, perhaps Jennifer, where you've done this before and it's been a comfortable journey to do what you really want to do, and that's the EB side, and you just keep blinders on and it's worked really well?
We do have those, nothing that's in writing. It's been, again, clarifying expectations on the front end and open dialogue. And really, we're trying to get the best result for the client at the end of the day. And it has been a respectful and just a mutual appreciation for what we're trying to do at the end of the day.
Amisha, anything to add?
No, I think Jennifer and Angela said it best.
You know, the hardest thing, I think, is the script to give those firms who are now facing that they might not be doing it the way it really should be done. We need to give them, I guess, some confidence that, number one, we're going to be here for them and we can collaborate with them, but also, number two, that we're not going to step on their toes and we're going to act, walk, and talk like the professionals that we say we are. And thirdly, I guess to remind everybody that that's what distinguishes us as a profession, that we can actually do this and we can actually collaborate. And the business side sometimes just takes the second place. Do you want to come up and answer your questions now? I do have two of them for you.
Well, I don't want to interrupt, but I'm glad to do that.
Yeah, yep. Will there be specific examples published of the DOL audit findings? And that's specific examples. That's your first one.
Well, there is an attachment to our audit report that talks about all that we saw in all of the engagements, and so you'll see quite a lot of information there. But that's the most detail that you're going to...
Nothing else will be forthcoming.
No.
That's it. So what you have is what you have.
Right, and it's a lot. That's what I'd like
It
to
is a
tell you.
lot to look at these things. Many of the common findings in the report were no work performed.
Right.
I assume that's only when it was determined immaterial.
Well, people didn't make that judgment necessarily. You know, we just saw no work. You know, it's one thing if somebody says, we did no work in this area because we deemed it to be immaterial or inconsequential or whatever. But by and large, we didn't see that. So we didn't see that. We didn't know why they didn't do any work. So if they didn't document why they didn't do any work, we just considered that a failure.
Thank you. Any other questions here while he's up here? No? Thank you.
All right, let me step down then.
Thank you very much. All right, I have a question here. It's quite long. What can we do to remedy the situation where the third-party provider record keeper appears to be delaying our audit start date and conference dates into tax season? We are trusting but skeptical of a possible goal of delaying us in the hope of having us cut corners to finish their audit before we get extremely busy. Fiscal year end are June 30 and August 31st. We are a small firm with under 10 employees. Did you understand the question?
I would probably have the plan administrator involved in those discussions as to when they can expect the report and the plan financial reporting package. In addition, you know, going forward, you know, for the next year audits as well, having those discussions up front in terms of expectations of when those reports will be delivered. And so this way, from a scheduling perspective, that can be incorporated into your timing and year-end staffing for procedures.
And the person who posted the question also wanted you to know that it's a multi-employer audit. Does that change anything, Jennifer?
No, I think it's a
Angela?
lot about communication with your client as the sponsor, and identifying target dates that are, again, communicated in advance, part of the planning phase that happens before we get to our busy seasons.
So the planning is crucial, actually,
Planning.
so your planning is year-round. I have one more question here. How does each of the speakers define materiality?
It depends.
Okay.
It really does depend.
I get it.
We have
That's a very insufficient answer.
Yes.
When I say that as a lawyer, it's not acceptable, Jennifer, so you're going to need to explain, I think.
It depends on the facts and circumstances. If you're talking about if it's material, whether you include it in the financial statement, so if you have a $50 receivable that's not there, it's immaterial to include it. Again, given that the plan size is large, that's a different consideration versus your materiality when you're doing some type of sample selection. So a lot of the plans that we deal with have a high-risk area in the distributions, and so we use materiality and we use the tools and the practice aids to identify what the materiality should be based, again, on those tools and practice aids.
Angela?
We use Knowledge Coach just to say what we use as far as audit methodology, and we follow those forms, and we have a lot of internal dialogue about the difference between an audit plan and then sometimes why you're doing something from a compliance standpoint, and sometimes they feel like they're at odds. I'm hoping one day we can have a town hall about audit efficiency, because I feel like all that we've done over the years is add more and more work, because you come and you hear all these things and it makes you go home scared, and you say, well, I think we need to look at a few more of those and a few more of these. So you've got both of those things you've got to keep front of mind. It's not just materiality, it's the compliance piece of all of this.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Angela. I think there's materiality set for, some of our thresholds and our plans, but you really have to take a look at, regardless of whether it's material or not material, is there a significant plan failure, compliance issues that you really have to focus in on outside of the materiality factor, especially when it comes to areas of whether it's benefit payments or participant contributions.
Along those lines, when we were having our conference calls to prepare for today, it seemed to me that resources, you all don't seem to use the same resources. I think, Jennifer, you had some resource that Courtney had never heard of, and so there was discussion about resources. So can you talk, each of you, to the resources that you personally find really beneficial, and what resources your firm uses regularly? And then, Jennifer, if you have anything to add from what Amisha says, and same thing with Angela, because I'm sure you do use a lot of the same resources, and we've already talked about the AICPA conferences as being really the anchor, I guess, for the knowledge base. But what do you do when it's a competency issue? It's really, you really need to understand something, because now you're staring at it. And it's not just a matter of up here at a conference, but you're in the weeds. So what do you do? Where do you go?
Sure. So I think a part of the conversation and having a benefit plan practice is really evaluating your internal quality control review over those benefit plans. And during a conversation that we all had last week, we were talking about, what do our firms really do to make sure that competency is there? One of the resources that we do use that's available, obviously, is going to these benefit plan conferences, whether hosted by the AICPA, which is really the main and core one that we do utilize, but there's also other benefit plan conferences, either available through the Quality Control Center webinars or the state society conferences. From an internal quality control perspective, and really ensuring that we're performing quality audits, that competency is there. One of the things that we do is for each of our benefit plan engagements, We do have 2 practitioners involved in each engagement, so we'll have a practitioner in charge. We'll also have a full quality control reviewer or concurring partner for those benefit plan engagements. They're involved throughout the beginning aspects of that planning phase, involved in the discussion of the risk, the fraud risk, and that discussion that happens throughout the very beginning. We also have, after the annual AICPA benefit plan conference, we do host 2 internal firm-wide trainings to our employees. One is firm-wide, really all the hot topics related to benefit plans, and that is required and mandatory for all of the individuals who are working on benefit plan engagements. But we also have specifically designed benefit plan trainings for our associates and our seniors, those who are on the site day to day working on these benefit plans. And that training really is more geared towards really understanding how to read the plan document, how to understand plan operations, and knowing what to do when you're on site at those client engagements.
So we use very similar resources, and then again, to address some unusual or unique, compliance issues or technical issues that come up, we utilize our association with, for us it's PKF, you mentioned McGladrey in the past. There are different practice groups, employee benefit plan practice groups that we have direct contact with. We've reached out directly to Ian's office when needed. Then also, just as resources, we use, again, for more of compliance or tax questions that we have, we use the ERISA guidebook as a resource to get our staff on point before we have some conversations with our plan sponsors if issues arise. So that's another resource that we use, in addition to the similar ones that Amisha had mentioned.
We're the same. I will say we tried with our staff and associates one year to do the AICPA conference virtually, and you watch the staff people kind of fall asleep during it. So we have moved more towards internal trainings and the AICPA self-studies for that group. That's the only difference, I think.
So the competency actually comes back home, it sounds to me like. You go out, you have people that are designated to go out, but the competency really comes back when those folks who know your firm's procedures and operations, they really take it and hit the road with it. So that competency base, it seems like that's really important, I guess, to your ongoing practice and procedures.
Absolutely.
So my question leading up to that, I guess, is ever since, 25 years, the Department of Labor has been very much involved with the AICPA's May conference. It seems to me that the Department of Labor's outreach, they call it their outreach as part of their enforcement. What if the Department of Labor was no longer outreaching like they did? It seems to me that you all really rely heavily on that outreach in order to get that competency level, and you depend upon that at the conference. Can you comment on that at all? It seems like you're not just getting it from peers. I think every one of you at one point has said that you've called Ian's office, and you've relied on that. So it seems like some of your competency isn't really being addressed in those places that you just mentioned. So can you just talk a little bit about why that might be and how important that outreach is to your practice?
I think we acknowledge that it doesn't matter what I think. In some cases, we need to hear what they think. And it's important to have these outreaches. You mentioned ask the experts and being able to have an open dialogue. And the mutual respect thing you mentioned is really important. We're not looking to judge each other in a negative way. We want to have conversations, professional to professional, about issues that we're encountering and how to appropriately deal with them so everyone is taking the right approach and we're all comfortable with the answer. So I think the outreach is key.
I think that in the employee benefit plan industry, there's so many unique complexities. And so, even if you do 85 plans or you do 26 plans, you're gonna come across something that you haven't seen before, and it's nearly impossible to prepare every one of your staff members to address every one of these unique issues, and having the opportunity to knowledge share with peers or knowledge share with the regulators is just vitally important.
Yeah, I agree. I think the AICPA Benefit Plan Conference and, the different webinars and resources that are available through the Audit Quality Control Center are great resources for firms to use. But at the end of the day, as Jennifer said and Angela said, these plans are so unique. Each plan document you come across is so different, and sometimes a lot of it is legal jargon. So being able to really be able to utilize resources not only within your firm but outside resources as well really helps perform those audits to be of quality.
All right, our time's waning. So I don't know if we've covered everything you would want to say here in this forum, so now is your opportunity, open forum, before we turn it over to Stephanie to close up our town hall. Don't all volunteer at once. Jennifer?
Oh, I did inquire of Ian at the break, because I was very curious for myself when he was referring to 113 referrals. And so I just need to clarify from my own knowledge, and maybe you guys are interested, that is 113 individual audit engagements that he is referring to as referrals. I was trying to do the math about it. Is it 113 practitioners, is it 113 firms, or 113 engagements? And it's the actual plans themselves, the plan audits themselves. So just to clarify that.
Misha, anything to say, anything to add?
I do not. I think we've just hit on a lot of the topics and challenges that we have with benefit plans. We're happy to answer any questions from the audience or virtual audience.
I don't have any more coming in. I don't know if anyone here has any questions, but this is your time because we're going to close down the panel. Jennifer?
Just on behalf of the panel, without asking them first, that we really appreciate the opportunity that the Virginia Society took to put this together, the regulators who came, Lisa, and all of your efforts in getting this together and getting it together so quickly, and to allow us to participate. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Angela?
I wanted to just share my hope for the future in some of the AICPA conferences that we do is just that we can start to show each other some examples of our work, how we sample, how we select, how we test, and that we can have more conversations about a granular level approach versus, we have all these conversations about everything needs to be better, but can we start to get in front of each other and talk a little bit more in detail about the actual engagements and some best practices related to the actual audit work?
So those of you who are virtual, in our discussions, if Courtney were here, she would say, of course I would work with somebody who's in Alaska. I don't necessarily need to be in Richmond, Virginia with another CPA that needs my expertise on any EB audit. So this crosses state lines. This is something that is coming from a national perspective. It's coming from a national professional perspective. And I guess I just want to close that I hope we've achieved part of our goal today in educating you as to what the issue is, providing you with resources that you might not have heard about before, and presenting you with solutions and potential solutions that you can use, as in the panel of experts that you have here, and I include Courtney very much in that. So hopefully this is not your typical town hall like I started. Hopefully you now have a decision to make if you just do one or two. Do I want to continue to do 1 and 2 in a mediocre way? And do I really want to do that in this profession that I'm very proud of? And if not, you now have resources. So there's no necessary excuse. There could be reasons, but there's no excuse not to utilize them. These are great people who do great work. In my firm, of course, every firm makes mistakes. We all make mistakes, but it's the character of how you deal with those mistakes. It shows your character how you move forward when you have made a mistake or you've discovered you made. Of course, you don't know always that you've made a mistake. Now you find a mistake. It's how you deal with that shows your character. And I think our profession is built upon the integrity that we all strive to be. In my firm, when we make mistakes, we remind ourselves what we strive to do. And in my firm, we always strive for perfection. We strive for perfection. We want to be perfect. But as people, we're not perfect. So at the end of the day, what we say is we're going to strive for perfection, but if we achieve excellence along the way, then the journey was worth it. So let's all try and see what we can do to be excellent employee benefit plan auditors, and that would be a really cool thing as a result of this town hall. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Lisa, for those closing words. I think they absolutely do sum up what we're trying to do here today. And I just want to thank all of our speakers, everyone who's taken the time and to travel here, to come and spend the morning with us and to share your expertise. We appreciate all of you here. We will be archiving the video that we have taken here today. So this will be available, not for CPE credit, but it will be available indefinitely on our website, and we'll be sending out information and sharing that with the other state societies as well. I do want to thank Lisa, give a special thank you to you. It was her vision for this event, and this is really just the beginning. It's the beginning of our town halls across Virginia. It's the beginning, really, of this conversation and this collaboration with our firms and regulators and the profession. So thank you, Lisa, for all of your hard work. Thank you to the staff, Zane here, hosting our webcast, and Amy Parker, who's done a great job in really making all of this happen. So couple just closing housekeeping. Just want to remind you again of the 20% discount for the EBP audit guide that was referred to today. We will be sending out CPE verification for all of those in attendance. We'll be sending that out in email, as well as with a link to an evaluation form. And the webcast attendees will have that CPE verification available on the webcast today. And I would like to invite everyone in the room to our networking luncheon. We will have that today, and it will be down the hall at the Great Falls Room. So with that, thank you all again. Thanks to our attendees on the webcast, and we'll be closing. Thank you all.